The encounter. The night sky above the alien world was silent, broken only by the sound of a lonely wind. The human explorer, known only as Captain Eric, walked carefully through the ruins of a forgotten city. The air was thin, the ground cracked, and the silence carried a weight that pressed against his chest. His ship had landed days ago, damaged after crossing a storm of fire in space. He had come here looking for resources, for fuel, for any hope of survival. But what he found was something far stranger. The ruins looked ancient, tall stone towers leaning against one another like broken bones. Every step he took echoed against hollow walls, and his boots kicked up silver dust that shimmered in the dim starlight. It was not a place for the living, Eric thought. It was a graveyard of a civilization long gone. And yet, deep inside the ruins, he felt he was being watched. The feeling grew heavier with each step, like unseen eyes following him. It was not just the silence. It was the way shadows seemed to move where they should not. He pushed forward, flashlight cutting through the dark. His hand rested on the sidearm at his belt, though he knew it would do little good against whatever roamed this world. Then he heard it, a low growl, soft but sharp, like thunder rolling deep beneath the earth. He froze, heart pounding, listening. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by the sound of chains clinking against stone. Something was alive here, something trapped, something hungry. Eric's light caught movement in the corner of the chamber ahead. There, half hidden in the shadows, was a massive shape curled against the wall. Its body was lean but powerful, its scales cracked and dull with hunger. Eyes burned faintly in the dark, glowing like embers refusing to die. It was a beast, but not any beast Eric had ever known. Its body stretched across the floor, tail coiled, wings folded like broken sails, and around its neck and limbs, thick chains of alien steel held it in place. The explorer's first thought was to run, to flee back to his ship and never return. But the creature looked at him, and in its eyes he did not see blind rage. He saw pain, he saw hunger, and perhaps something more, something ancient. It let out a breath, long and weak, the sound echoing through the chamber like the sigh of a dying storm. Eric's instincts screamed for caution, yet something else whispered in him. This was not an ordinary predator. This was a prisoner, starving and waiting for an end. He reached into his pack, pulling out one of his last food rations. It was not much, just dried protein and fruit sealed in a small container. He stared at it for a long moment, torn between survival and compassion. Then, slowly, he tossed it across the floor toward the beast. The container slid across the dust and came to rest near its claws. The creature's head lowered, nostrils flaring. With a careful motion, it snapped the box open and devoured the food in a single bite. Its eyes lifted again, locking on Eric, burning brighter now. The silence stretched, heavy and unbroken. Eric took a cautious step back, but the beast did not attack. Instead, it lowered its head, as if considering him. The glow in its eyes flickered, and for the first time Eric thought he saw more than hunger. There was recognition, a strange spark of intelligence hiding beneath the weight of its suffering. The chains rattled as the creature shifted, trying to move closer, but held back. It growled again, softer this time, a sound that was not a threat, but a warning. It was as if it wanted him to stay, not run. Eric felt his pulse race, but curiosity burned stronger than fear. What was this creature, and why had it been chained here in the heart of a dead city? He looked around, noticing carvings on the walls, faded with time. The shapes were strange, tall figures bowing to a winged beast. Symbols of fire, of stars, of guardianship and war. The ruined city had not only been home to people, it had been a shrine. And this beast, chained and starved, had once been something far greater. Not an animal, but a legend. The explorer's hands trembled as he lowered his weapon. He should have feared the creature, yet instead he felt the weight of its sorrow. It was more than hunger in those eyes. It was memory, as if the beast had seen countless ages pass, civilizations rise and fall. Eric swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. If he turned back now, he would never know the truth of what this creature was. If he stayed, he risked everything, perhaps even his life. But deep inside, he knew this meeting was no accident. The beast shifted again, chains pulling tight against stone. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence. Its eyes glowed brighter, fixed on him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. It did not roar, it did not lunge. It simply waited, watching, and in that moment Eric understood. He was no longer just an explorer searching for survival. He was the first human to stand before something ancient, something powerful, and whatever choice he made now would change everything. The wind howled through the broken towers above, carrying dust and whispers into the chamber. Eric tightened his grip on the flashlight, staring into those burning eyes. The beast lowered its head once more, slow and deliberate, not in defeat, but in something far stranger, acknowledgement. A bond had begun, fragile as starlight, but undeniable. And deep in the ruins, the silence no longer felt empty. It felt alive, heavy with a promise. The encounter had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The feeding. The next day, the explorer returned to the ruins. He told himself it was foolish, that he should focus on repairing his ship. But his feet carried him back to the chamber where the beast waited. Something inside him refused to leave it behind. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was something deeper. He had seen many creatures across the stars, but none like this one. The beast was still chained, its body lying in the dust like a fallen shadow. But when it saw him, its eyes lit up with that same strange glow. It remembered him, the human who had fed it. Its claws scraped the floor as it shifted closer, chains grinding like stone against stone. Eric's heart pounded, but this time he did not freeze. He reached into his pack and pulled out another ration, the last of his dried fruit, something he had been saving for himself. He tossed it across the floor, the package skidding until it touched the edge of the beast's reach. The dragon-like creature leaned forward, snapping up the food with a sharp motion. It ate quickly, but not wildly, and when it finished, it looked at him again. That gaze unsettled him more than any roar could have. Those eyes were not just hungry, they were aware. The chains rattled as the beast lowered its head, almost as if bowing. The gesture was subtle, but Eric felt its weight. It was no mere animal, it was showing gratitude. He sat down on a fallen block of stone, still keeping a safe distance. The silence stretched between them, but no longer felt empty. He could hear the creature breathing, each breath deep and heavy. Dust rose with every exhale, scattering like tiny stars in the faint light. Eric studied it carefully, noticing the details he had missed before. Its scales were cracked, but under the dull surface he saw flashes of color, shades of red and silver, as if fire burned beneath its skin. Its wings were folded tight, too weak to spread, yet still vast enough to fill the chamber. Eric pulled out his datapad, recording the sight before him. Not ordinary, he whispered to himself. Not ordinary at all. He searched his memory, the stories told by old spacers in lonely stations. Legends of star beasts, guardians of ancient worlds. Tales dismissed as fantasy, nothing more than myths carried across the void. And yet here one was, chained and starving before his very eyes. He felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. It was as if he was not just witnessing history, but living it. The beast growled softly, not with anger, but with effort. Its claws dug into the ground as it shifted forward. The chain strained, sparking faint light where metal met stone. Eric tensed, hand on his weapon, but the creature did not attack. Instead, it lowered itself, curling closer to the floor, and then, in a sound so faint he thought he imagined it, he heard a whisper, a voice that did not belong to any beast, a voice that carried weight, age, and sorrow. More, it said, weak and broken. Eric froze, breath caught in his chest. The sound had not been a growl, it had been a word. The creature had spoken. He stared at it, disbelief and awe crashing through him. The glowing eyes held his, waiting, demanding. It was not asking for food alone. It was asking for something else, something deeper. Recognition, understanding, trust. Eric's mind spun. If this creature could speak, then it was no mindless beast. It was intelligent, aware, perhaps older than any race he had known. And it was dying, not from hunger alone, but from being forgotten. He swallowed hard, realizing his choices mattered more than he thought. He was not just keeping it alive. He was reviving something the galaxy had tried to bury. He stood, looking at the remains of his supplies. He had little left, enough for only a few days at most. But he could not turn back now. He would find more, he promised himself. Food, water, whatever it took. The beast's life was tied to his own now. And deep inside, he felt the truth pressing against his thoughts. This was not chance, it was fate. As he left the ruins, the beast lifted its head. Its eyes followed him until he disappeared into the night. The sound of chains echoed behind him, like thunder waiting to break. The silence of the ruins no longer felt like death. It felt like a heartbeat, slow but growing stronger. Eric walked into the darkness, knowing he would return, knowing he had crossed a line he could never step back from. And behind him, in the shadows of the forgotten city, the beast whispered again, its voice carried on the wind. Human, it said, as if testing the word. Not as prey, not as enemy, but as something more, something it had waited for through hunger, chains, and time itself. The revelation. The ruins no longer felt silent when Eric returned. The air carried a pulse, faint but steady, like the rhythm of something awakening. He walked deeper into the broken halls, carrying what little food he had managed to gather. And there she was, the beast, waiting in the half-dark. Her eyes glowed brighter now, no longer dim embers but small flames. She had grown stronger, and with her strength came something new. As he tossed the food toward her, she caught it gently. Her movements were sharper now, her head held higher. When she finished eating, she did not lower her gaze as before. Instead, she fixed her burning eyes on him, unblinking, unyielding. And then, she spoke again, clearer this time, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You hear me," she said, the words broken, heavy, but unmistakable. Eric's skin prickled, his breath caught in his chest. He had imagined whispers before, but this was no dream. The beast had spoken, words shaped by intelligence. He stepped back, unsure if he should run or stay. But the creature shifted, the chains clinking softly. "No fear," she whispered, her voice deep as stone, ancient as fire. "Not enemy." Eric swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. What are you?" he asked, his voice shaking but steady enough to carry through the ruins. The beast's eyes narrowed, flames reflecting in their depths. "I'm older than this city," she said, "older than the chains that bind me." Her wings flexed weakly against the walls, dust raining down from above. "I was guardian," she said, "protector of the stars." The words struck him like thunder. Protector of the stars. He thought of the carvings on the walls, the winged figures, the kneeling people. The ruins were not only a city, they were a temple. And she, this chained creature, had once been worshipped, not as a monster, but as a sentinel, something powerful enough to guard entire worlds. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, though her body still trembled with hunger. "They betrayed me," she said. "My own kind feared my bond with the mortals." She shifted her claws, dragging them against the stone. "They chained me here, to die, to vanish, to be forgotten." Her gaze pierced him, sharp and unrelenting. "But you," she said, "you feed me, you see me." Eric's mind raced. If what she said was true, then this was not simply a beast. This was history itself, alive before him. And if she had been a guardian, then who, or what, had she guarded against? He tried to speak, but the weight of her gaze silenced him. She lowered her head, not in defeat, but in sorrow. "The stars are not safe," she said. "They will come again." The chamber seemed to grow colder at her words. Shadows stretched long across the floor. Eric felt the meaning even if he did not understand fully. There was a threat, something vast, something waiting beyond the silence of space. Something she alone had once stood against. And now, chained and starved, she was helpless, unless he chose to act. He took a step closer, though every instinct screamed at him not to. "Why me?" he asked. "Why do you speak to me?" The beast's eyes glowed brighter, fire flickering inside like a storm trapped behind glass. "Because you are human," she said simply. "You are not like them." She pulled against her chains, the sound echoing like thunder. "You carry a fire they cannot break." Her words sank deep into him. Humanity was small in the galaxy, fragile and scattered. Yet here was a creature older than empires, calling him different. He felt something stir in his chest. Fear, yes, but also pride. If what she said was true, then humans had a role to play in something far greater than survival. They had a place in the stars, a place even legends could not ignore. Eric looked at the broken chains, at the cracks forming where stone met steel. His rations were nearly gone, his ship barely functional. But leaving her here meant abandoning more than just a creature. It meant abandoning a truth older than his people. The galaxy was not silent. It was waiting, and she was the key to understanding why. The beast lowered her head again, her voice soft but filled with power. "Free me," she said, "and I will show you the truth." The words hung in the air like a blade, sharp and dangerous. Eric's hands trembled as he stared at her. Free her and risk his life, his world, his people, or leave her and live in ignorance. The choice weighed heavy, heavier than anything he had faced before. Outside, the wind screamed through the broken towers. The stars burned cold and distant above. And deep in the ruins, a human and a dragon stared at one another. Both bound, both hungry, both waiting. Eric knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Not after this revelation. The decision. The ruins felt heavier now, as if the very walls leaned in to hear his choice. Eric stood in silence, staring at the chained beast before him. Her words echoed in his mind, sharp as steel. "Free me, and I will show you the truth." The idea should have terrified him, yet instead it settled in his chest like a weight he could not ignore. She was no ordinary creature. She was something vast, something ancient, but even legends could destroy. He walked slowly around the chamber, his boots crunching on broken stone. The chains glimmered faintly where alien symbols were etched into their surface. He reached out, brushing a finger against one link, and felt a sting of energy burn his skin. The chains were not simple metal, they were alive with old technology. It would take more than strength to break them. It would take will, and perhaps sacrifice. Eric stepped back, rubbing his hand, his thoughts spinning. If he freed her, there was no turning back. If she spoke the truth, then the galaxy was in danger, and only she knew how to stop it. But if she lied, if she was no guardian but a weapon, then he would be the fool who unleashed her upon countless worlds. His stomach knotted as he weighed the risk. The beast's eyes followed him, glowing brighter in the dim light. "You doubt," she said, her voice low and steady. "You fear me." Her words pierced him, not with anger but with truth. He clenched his fists. "Of course I fear you," he said. "You could kill me in an instant." The beast shifted, the chains rattling against stone. "If I wished you dead, human, you would already be ash," she replied. Her head lowered, not in weakness but in restraint. Eric turned away, pacing. He thought of Earth, far away, fragile and unknowing. Humanity was still young, still small in the vast sea of stars. Would freeing her help his people, or doom them? He pressed his hand against his face, breathing hard. The decision pressed on him like the weight of a collapsing star. The carvings on the walls seemed to watch him. The old symbols of fire and wings glowed faintly as the starlight reached through cracks above. He studied them again, the kneeling figures, the beast standing tall. It was not a picture of fear, but of respect, of partnership. Perhaps the ancients had not worshipped her out of terror. Perhaps they had trusted her, as she now asked him to do. The beast spoke again, her voice softer now, almost human. "You carry the fire," she said. "Your kind was never meant to bow, never meant to hide." Her words cut through his doubt, stirring something deep in his chest. He thought of the long nights drifting in the void, the way humans endured, survived, built, even when the universe offered nothing but silence. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps humanity's strength was not its weapons or ships, but the stubborn flame that refused to die. Still, the fear lingered. Eric looked at her once more, her body chained and scarred, yet her eyes alive with fire. He asked the question that burned most in his mind. "If I free you, what happens to me?" The beast's head tilted, her eyes narrowing like twin suns. "You live," she said, "not as prey, not as servant, but as partner." Her voice deepened, carrying the weight of centuries. "You will see the stars as they truly are." The chamber trembled as if the ruins themselves shivered at her words. Dust rained down from the ceiling, filling the air with silver haze. Eric clenched his jaw, his mind screaming with doubt. But beneath the fear, beneath the weight of risk, something else stirred, a spark of defiance, a refusal to walk away from the unknown. Humanity had always leapt into the dark, and he was no different. He stepped closer to the chains, studying the alien locks. Strange runes pulsed faintly on their surface. He pulled his tools from his pack, hands shaking but steady enough to work. The beast watched him, silent now, as if holding her breath. Every strike of his tool sent sparks across the stone. The chains resisted, humming with hidden power. But he did not stop. He would not stop. Hours passed like moments, sweat dripping down his face. His fingers ached, his body screamed for rest. Yet the chains began to weaken, cracks spreading across the glowing symbols. With each fracture, the air grew heavier, filled with heat and power. The beast shifted, testing her strength, the chamber trembling as she pulled against her bonds. Eric stepped back, chest heaving. He had done enough. Soon the chains would break. Soon the decision would no longer be a question. The beast raised her head, her eyes burning brighter than ever before. "You choose," she said, her voice echoing like thunder in the ruins. "Not fear, not chains, but fire." Eric met her gaze, his hands trembling but his eyes steady. "Yes," he whispered, "I choose." The chains shuddered, glowing cracks racing across their surface. The sound filled the ruins like the roar of a storm. Eric braced himself as dust fell from the ceiling. The decision had been made. The choice was no longer a thought. It was an action. He had set something unstoppable into motion, and deep in his heart, he knew the galaxy would never forget this moment. The awakening. The ruins shook as the first chains split apart. The sound was sharp, like lightning tearing through stone. Eric stumbled back, covering his face as shards of glowing metal scattered across the floor. The beast did not roar. She only breathed deeply. Her breath was heavy, filled with heat, carrying the weight of centuries. Another chain cracked, its runes flaring once before fading to darkness. The air grew hotter, the chamber trembling with every breath she drew. Eric watched in awe, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had expected fury. He had expected destruction. But instead, she moved with control, each motion deliberate, restrained. Her wings unfolded slowly, stretching for the first time in what must have been ages. Dust and stone rained from the ceiling as her vast wings brushed against the walls. They shimmered faintly, not dull and broken now, but alive. Fire-colored veins glowed beneath the scales, painting her body in light. The last chain snapped with a sound that echoed like thunder through the ruins. She rose to her full height, her head brushing the cracked roof above. For a moment, Eric felt small, a mere shadow in the presence of something timeless. But then her eyes lowered to him, glowing with fire and focus. She did not strike, She did not roar. She bowed her head, slow and deliberate, a gesture of acknowledgement, of choice. Not predator to prey, but equal to equal. Eric's throat was dry, his body frozen between fear and wonder. He could feel the heat radiating from her, a warmth that was not meant to burn but to shield. Her voice came again, stronger now, no longer a whisper but a storm. "Human," she said, "you have done what no other would." The sound of her words shook the air, yet carried a strange softness beneath the power. "You chose fire over fear, and for that, you are marked." He stepped forward, legs trembling but steady enough to carry him closer. "What are you now?" he asked, voice breaking. She unfurled her wings fully, the light spilling across the chamber. "I am myself again," she answered. "I am more than beast, more than prisoner." Her body shone with shifting colors, flames dancing across her scales. "But I am not whole without purpose, and that purpose now binds to you." Eric felt the words strike something deep within him. It was more than gratitude, more than recognition. It was a bond, forged not of chains but of choice. He realized in that moment that he had not freed a weapon. He had awakened a partner, and together, they stood at the edge of something greater than either alone. The chamber around them began to collapse. Pillars cracked under the force of her wings, stones raining down in heavy crashes. Eric stumbled, nearly falling, but she moved quickly. Her massive body shielded him, her wings folding around him like walls of living fire. The stones broke harmlessly against her scales, sparks flaring where they struck. She lowered her head, her eye meeting his once more. "You will not fall," she said, "not while I breathe." The ceiling gave way, revealing the night sky above. The stars burned sharp and cold, scattered across the darkness. She stretched her wings into the open air, the wind rushing around them. For the first time in centuries, she was free beneath the stars. Eric stood at her side, his chest heaving, his eyes wide. He had not only freed her, he had changed himself. He was no longer just an explorer stranded on a broken world. He was part of something that reached far beyond survival. The beast rose into the night sky, her wings beating with thunder. Eric shielded his eyes against the gale of wind and dust. The ruins below crumbled into silence, swallowed by shadows. But above, she burned like a living star, her fire trailing across the sky. He watched her circle once, her vast body a silhouette against the moons. Then she descended, landing before him with grace that shook the ground. Her voice came again, powerful but steady. "Now we begin," she said. "The stars have waited long enough." Eric's pulse raced, his fear replaced with something new. It was not just awe, it was determination. He did not know what dangers waited beyond the stars, but he knew he would not face them alone. The fire in her eyes reflected in his own. Two flames, bound by choice, burning against the endless dark. The awakening was not only hers, it was his as well. The moment when a lone human chose to rise beside a dragon. The moment when fear gave way to fire. And the galaxy, though it did not yet know, had just shifted forever. The battle. The stars were not silent that night. Eric looked up and saw shadows moving across the sky. Black shapes gliding like vultures, their engines burning red against the moons. Alien warships, sleek and sharp, descending through the clouds. The beast lifted her head, her wings spreading wide, her eyes burning with fire. "They have found me," she said, her voice carrying both fury and sorrow. "The ones who chained me, their machines still hunt." Eric's heart pounded, the ground trembling as the first ship opened fire. Bolts of energy streaked across the ruins, tearing stone apart in bursts of white light. The beast shielded him, her wings folding like walls of living steel. Flames rippled across her scales, absorbing the heat, defying the fire. She let out a roar that split the night, a sound so vast the stars seemed to shiver. The warships faltered for an instant, their shadows quivering in the sky. And then The battle began. With a single beat of her wings, she rose into the air. Dust and stone blasted outward as she climbed toward the enemy. Eric watched in awe as her body became a streak of fire against the dark. She met the first warship head-on, her claws tearing through metal like paper. Flames poured from her mouth, swallowing the machine in an inferno. The wreck fell burning into the ruins, shaking the ground like thunder. But more ships moved in, surrounding her in a deadly circle. Eric's instincts screamed at him to hide, but his mind refused. He ran across the broken ground, searching the wreckage of the ruins. His eyes caught glimpses of old technology, forgotten panels, and control towers half buried in stone. He sprinted to one, brushing away the dust, his fingers dancing over alien symbols. The console hummed faintly, alive after centuries of silence. He didn't know the language, but patterns spoke louder than words. Power conduits, targeting relays, defensive arrays. Above him, the beast fought like a storm given form. Her fires split the night, her wings shattered the air. But the warships adapted, weaving in formation, striking in rhythm. Bolts hammered her sides, forcing her down. She roared again, but Eric could hear the strain. Even legends could be overwhelmed by numbers. She needed more than fire. She needed a partner. Think, Eric muttered, his hands flying across the console. He remembered her words. Humans carried fire of their own, not strength like hers, but something different. Cleverness, defiance, the refusal to give in. He rerouted power lines, forcing the ancient system awake. Warning lights flared across the console, and then the ruins themselves stirred. From broken towers, hidden turrets rose, their barrels glowing faint with long-forgotten energy. Eric slammed his fist on the final switch. Beams of light lanced into the sky, striking one of the warships. It exploded in a burst of fire, fragments scattering across the stars. The beast turned, her eyes locking on Eric below. For a moment, fire reflected fire, and then she dove. Together, human and dragon fought as one. Her flames and claws, his strategy and cunning. The sky became a storm of light. Warships burst under her fury. Machines burned under her fire. But Eric guided the ruins' weapons, turning their long-dead city into a fortress once more. He lured the enemy into crossfire, timing the turrets to strike with her attacks. Every blast, every strike felt like a rhythm, a song of survival. She was the fire, he was the spark. Together they burned. But the enemy was not finished. The largest ship hovered above, massive and silent, its shadow swallowing the ruins. Its cannons charged, glowing brighter than the moon's. The air hummed with deadly energy. The beast roared, fire bursting from her chest. But even her flames could not reach that far. Eric felt the weight of the moment press against his soul. He scanned the console, his hands trembling. There was one last command buried in the system. Ancient symbols marked with warnings, glowing faintly as if alive. He didn't know if it was a weapon or a death trap, but he had no choice. He entered the sequence, his breath sharp in his chest. "Come on," he whispered, "one last spark." The ruins shuddered, a deep rumble shaking the ground. A massive beam of energy burst upward, brighter than fire, sharper than steel. It pierced the sky, striking the warship through its core. The explosion lit the heavens, tearing the ship apart in a storm of light. The beast soared upward, catching the falling wreck in a blaze of fire. She roared in triumph, her voice rolling across the stars. The sky burned with victory. Eric collapsed against the console, his body weak but his spirit alight. The ruins smoked, the air still trembling with power. Above him, the beast landed, folding her wings as she looked at him. Her voice carried both pride and promise. "Not beast and rider," she said, "but partners in fire." Eric met her gaze, the flame in her eyes reflected in his own. For the first time, he truly understood. The battle was not just survival. It was the beginning of something greater. The legacy. The battlefield was quiet at last. Smoke drifted through the ruins, glowing faintly under the light of the moons. Shattered warships burned in the distance, their wreckage falling like broken stars. The air smelled of ash and fire, yet carried a strange peace. Eric stood among the ruins, his body weak, his clothes torn, his skin marked by burns. But his eyes were alive, filled with the fire of victory. The beast landed before him, her wings folding with slow grace. Her body trembled, scorched by countless strikes, her scales cracked and broken. Yet her eyes burned brighter than ever, two suns refusing to fade. She lowered her head, her breath heavy, her voice deep but steady. "You chose fire," she said, "and fire chose you." Eric reached forward, resting his hand against her massive snout. Her skin was hot, alive with heat, but steady like the beating of a great heart. But then he noticed it, the way her chest rose unevenly, the way her wings shook as if the weight of the sky pressed upon them. The battle had cost her dearly. She had given everything to protect him, to shield the ruins, to burn the enemy from the stars. And now her strength began to fade. "No," Eric whispered, his throat tight. "You can't stop now." The beast's eyes softened, her fire dimming but her voice unwavering. "My time is long, but not endless," she said, "yet yours is just beginning." She looked to the sky, the endless stretch of stars above. "The chains are gone, the silence is broken, and the stars remember me once more." Her gaze returned to him, piercing and unyielding. "But it is you they will follow, human, not me." Eric shook his head, his hands pressed against her scales. "I'm just one man," he said. "I can't carry this alone." The beast's eyes glowed faintly, flickering like embers in the wind. "You are never alone," she whispered. "The fire of your kind burns brighter than you know. Where I fall, you will rise. Where I end, you will begin." Her body shuddered, a deep rumble rolling through her chest. With her last strength, she spread her wings one final time. The glow of her scales burst forth, brighter than fire, brighter than stars. The ruins lit up as if dawn had come to the dead world. Eric shielded his eyes, but he did not step back. He stood before her, letting the fire wash over him, not burning him, but searing something deeper, a mark, a bond, a legacy. When the light faded, she lowered herself to the ground. Her vast body stilled, her breath quiet. Her fire dimmed into silence. But in Eric's chest, something new burned, a warmth that was not his own, but hers. Her voice echoed inside him, not with sound, but with memory. "You are not prey, not servant, but partner. Carry the fire and let it grow." Eric stood alone among the ruins, yet he did not feel alone. The night sky stretched above him, endless and waiting. The wrecks of the warships glowed faintly in the distance, and in his heart the fire remained. He looked to the stars, his jaw set, his eyes steady. The galaxy would remember this night, not because a beast had fallen, but because a human had risen. He walked through the ruins, his steps slow but certain. Every stone, every mark on the wall seemed alive now. No longer a tomb, but a beginning. The ancients had once bowed to her, but humanity would not bow. They would walk beside her memory, carrying her fire into the unknown. As the dawn broke across the horizon, the ruins glowed gold. Eric paused, looking back at her still form one last time. His chest ached, but the warmth inside did not fade. He raised his hand to the sky, as if swearing an oath. "We are not small," he said softly. "We are not weak." His words carried on the wind, mingling with the silence. "We are human, and we will endure." The stars above flickered faintly, as if listening. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers still hidden in its shadows. But now, it carried a flame it had never known before. The flame of humanity, born in the ruins of a forgotten city, forged in fire beside a dragon. And though she was gone, her legacy burned on, not as chains, not as silence, but as fire that no darkness could ever extinguish.